Hello and welcome back to the Palancar Podcast, where we are diving into Christopher Paolini's inheritance cycle, starting with the first book, Eragon. Today we're going to be going over the chapter Palancar Valley. That's actually where I got the name idea for the name of this podcast. I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently than I did in my previous video, just because of the fact that the prologue and the first chapter were 3 pages each, basically, and it was pretty easy to go line by line and just kind of set the tone for where we are. From here on out, the chapters get much larger, and it will be much harder to do that with. So I'm going to kind of go through them in my own words. When we get to parts that are descriptive, when we're talking about scenes or characters, I will be going over those just because it will set the scene a little bit better. And I think that it'll make for a much better experience all around. So without further ado, let's get into it. Where we left off, remember, Eragon was hunting for a doe to feed his family, and while he was getting ready to take his shot, a explosion shattered the night and rendered in front of him a smoldering boulder, which left a polished, smooth blue stone that had like white veins going all through it. He didn't know what it was or where it came from, but he took it with him because it might be worth some money, and he might be able to get some money to sell and get some meat because he missed the doe because of the explosion. Alright, so now we're going into Palancar Valley. The sun rose the next morning with a glorious conflagration of pink and yellow. The air was fresh, sweet, and very cold. Ice edged the streams, and small ponds were completely frozen over. After a breakfast of porridge, Eragon returned to the glen and examined the charred area. The morning light revealed no new details, so he started for home. Alright, so this part of the book where it gets pretty detailed into talking about the spine and where Eragon actually is. The spine is a dangerous place where the trees are so overgrown and so close together, and the roots of the trees are so knotted and intertwined that anybody that travels through the spine, through this area, they typically don't come back unscathed. They usually are met with fits of where they trip and fall and break a leg, or they injure themselves, or they get lost. But Eragon has been traveling through here for quite a long time, so he knows his way. He knows where he's going. The spine was one of the only places that King Galbatorix could not call his own. Stories were still told about how half his army disappeared after marching through its ancient forest. A cloud of misfortune and bad luck seemed to hang over it. And again, this is talking about how King Galbatorix had sent his entire army through the spine, and somehow nobody knows the story really, but somehow half of his army disappeared, and again, nobody really knows where they went or what happened to them. He had hiked in the mountains for years, yet he was still very wary of them. Every time he thought they had surrendered their secrets, something happened to upset his understanding of them, like the stone's appearance. He kept up a brisk pace, and the league steadily disappeared. In late evening, he arrived at the edge of the treacherous ravine. The Eragon River rushed far below him, heading into Palancar Valley. So here we go to a break. And he's actually just traveling pretty much through the woods and through the forest. He comes to this gorge where before him lays the entire of Palancar Valley, and he can see for leagues and miles away. And I'm going to read the description of what it looks like because I think it's actually a pretty good world building aspect. Before him lay Palancar Valley, exposed like an unfurled map. The base of the Igualda Falls, more than half a mile below, was the northernmost point of the valley. A little ways from the falls was Carvajal, a cluster of brown buildings. White smoke rose from the chimneys, defiant of the wilderness around it. At this height, farms were small square patches, no bigger than the end of his finger. The land around him was tan and sandy, where dead grass swayed in the wind. The Enora River wound from the falls toward Palancar's southern end, reflecting great strips of sunlight. Far in the distance, it flowed past the village Theransford and the lonely mountain Utgard. Beyond that, he knew only that it turned north and ran to the sea. So this is, again, the aspect of a farm boy. He knows what he knows, and past that, he's not really sure what there is or if there is anything past it. Everyone that he has talked to says that the world just falls off and that there's nothing past it. So that's what he believes. Carvahal's light shimmered nearby in the twilight. The houses cast long shadows aside from Theron's fort. Carvahal was the only village in Palancar Valley. The settlement, secluded and surrounded by harsh, beautiful land. Few traveled here except for merchants and trappers. So Eragon's coming home. Carvahal is about 10 miles away from where he actually lives, where his farmhouse is. So he is trying to go to Carvahal. He's going to go and meet up with the butcher there, and he's going to try to trade the stone that he found in the spine for some gold or for some meat so that he can get to feed his family. Eragon wove his way between the houses to the butcher's shop. A broad, thick-beamed building. Overhead, the chimney belched black smoke. He pushed the door open. The spacious room was warm and well lit by a fire, snapping at the stone fireplace. A bare counter stretched across the far side of the room. The floor was strewn with loose straw. Everything was scrupulously clean, as if the owner spent his leisure time digging in obscure crannies for minuscule pieces of filth. Behind the counter stood the butcher Sloane. A small man, he wore a cotton shirt and long blood-stained smock. An impressive array of knives swung at his belt. He had a sallow, pock-marked face, and his black eyes were suspicious. He polished the counter with a ragged cloth. So Sloane's description is he's kind of a smaller man, pock-marked face, and he's got a lot of knives. You can tell just from his demeanor and the way that his shop is set up. It's very clean. He's probably not going to be one of our most favorite characters. Sloane's mouth twisted as Eragon entered. Well, the mighty hunter joins the rest of us mortals. How many did you bag this time? None, was Eragon's curt reply. He had never liked Sloane. The butcher always treated him with disdain, as if he were something unclean. A widower, Sloane seemed to care for only one person, his daughter Katrina. And it's funny enough, Eragon has a cousin named Roran, and Roran's got a thing for Katrina. I'm amazed, said Sloane with affected astonishment. He turned his back to Eragon to scrape something off the wall. And that's the reason you're coming here. Yes, admitted Eragon uncomfortably. If that's the case, let's see your money. Sloane tapped his fingers when Eragon shifted his feet and remained silent. Come on, either you have it or you don't. Which is it? I don't really have any money, but I do... Wait, no money? The butcher cut him off sharply. And you expect to buy meat? Are the other merchants giving away their wares? Should I hand you the goods without charge? Besides, he said abruptly, it's late. Come back tomorrow with money. I'm closed for the day. Eragon glared at him. I can't wait until tomorrow, Sloane. It'll be worth your while, though. I found something to pay you with. He pulled out the stone with a flourish and set it gently on the scarred counter, where it gleamed in the light from the dancing flames. Stole it, more likely, muttered Sloane, leaning forward with an interested expression. Ignoring the comment, Eragon asked, Will this be enough? Sloane picked up the stone and gauged its weight speculatively. He ran his hands over the smoothness and inspected the white veins with a calculated look. He set it down. It's pretty, but how much is it worth? I don't know, Eragon admitted, but no one would have gone through the trouble of shaping it unless it had some value. Obviously, said Sloane with an exaggerated patience. But how much value? Since you don't know, I suggest you find a trader that does know, or take it off of my hand, or I'll take it off of you for 3 crowns. That's a miser's bargain. It must be worth at least 10 times that, protested Eragon. 3 crowns would not even buy enough meat to last a week. Sloane shrugged. If you don't like my offer, wait until the traders arrive. Either way, I'm tired of this conversation. The traders are a nomadic group of travelers that come through the town of Carvahal once every so often, and they bring their wares like meats, knives, metals, all different kinds of goods that the villagers of Carvajal might need or want to last for him for another year until the travelers come back. And Eragon doesn't really know when they're going to be coming back, so he actually accepts Sloane's offer. Fine, I accept, he snapped. Good, I'll get you the meat. Not that it matters, but where did you find this? 2 nights ago in the spine. Get out, demanded Sloane, pushing the stone away. So Eragon and Sloane come to an agreement. Sloane tells him that he's going to get him the meat for the gold that he offers him for the stone, and as soon as Eragon tells him that he finds it in the spine, he pushes it back towards him and he screams at him to get out. You refuse to sell to me? Yes, unless you pay with coins, Sloane growled and hefted a knife, sliding away. Go before I make you. And just then the door behind them slammed open and Eragon rolled around ready for more trouble. In stomped Horst, a hulking man. Sloane's daughter Katrina, a tall girl of 16, trailed behind him with a determined expression. Eragon was surprised to see her. She usually absented her father when any arguments involved. She usually absented herself from any arguments involving her father. Sloane glanced at them warily, then started to accuse Eragon. He won't. Quiet, announced Horst in a rumbling voice, cracking his knuckles at the same time. He was Carvajal's smith. As his thick neck and scarred leather apron attested, his powerful arms were bare to the elbow. A great expanse of hairy, muscular chest was visible through the top of his shirt. A black beard, carelessly trimmed, rolled and knotted like his jaw muscles. Sloane, what have you done now? So this is Horst. He's the village blacksmith, and he's one of the elders in the village, and he has a soft heart for Eragon. He likes him, and he likes his cousin Roran. They're both hardworking guys, and he likes that. Nothing. He gave Eragon a murderous graze, then spat. This boy came in here and started badgering me. I asked him to leave, but he won't budge. I even threatened him, and he still ignored me. And Horst looked at Eragon and said, Is this true? No, replied Eragon. I offered this stone as payment for some meat, and he accepted. But when I told him that I found it in the spine, he refused to even touch it. What difference does it make where it comes from? So from here, Katrina steps in, and Katrina stepped out from behind Horst and tossed her hair back, and her auburn hair like a spray of molten copper. Father, Eragon is willing to pay. Give him the meat, then we can go and have supper. Sloane's eyes narrowed dangerously. Go back to the house. This is none of your business. I said go. Katrina's face hardened. Then she marched out of the room with a stiff back. It's rude. Eragon watched with disapproval, but dared not interfere. Horst tugged at his beard before saying reproachfully, Fine, you can deal with me. What were you going to get, Eragon? His voice reverberated through the room. As much as I could. Horst pulled out a purse and counted out a pile of coins. Give me your best roasts and steaks. Make sure that it's enough to fill Eragon's pack. The butcher hesitated. His gaze darted between Horst and Eragon. Not selling to me would be a very bad idea, stated Horst. Glowering venomously, Sloane slipped into the back room. A frenzy of chopping, rapping, and low cursing reached them. After several uncomfortable minutes, he returned with an armful of wrapped meat. His face was expressionless as he accepted Horst's money, then proceeded to clean his knife, pretending that they were not there. So Horst comes in and says, "All right, you won't sell to Eragon. You better sell to me." Offers him the gold for the meat that Eragon wanted to buy. Horst goes and grabs it, and then Eragon loads up all the meat, and they go ahead and they leave. As they walk out, Eragon says, "Thank you, Horst. Uncle Geralt will be pleased." And I wrote in, "Not really." Horst did a really cool thing, but Eragon's uncle was not going to really see it that way. He's not really one to take charity, as it will. He thinks that if they can't get it for themselves, then they don't need it. Horst laughed quietly. Don't thank me. I've wanted to do that for a long time. Sloane's a vicious troublemaker. It does him good to be humbled. Katrina heard what was happening and ran to fetch me. Good thing I came. The two of you are almost to blows. Unfortunately, I doubt he'll serve you or your family for the next time you go there, even if you do have coins. Why did he explode like that? We've never been friendly, but he's always taken our money, and I've never seen him treat Katrina that way, said Eragon, opening the top of his pack. Horse shrugged. Ask your uncle. He knows about it than I do. He knows more about it than I do. Eragon shuffled through the meat of his pack. Well, now I have one more reason to hurry home, to solve this mystery. Here, this is rightfully yours. He proffered the stone. Horse chuckled. No, you keep it, your strange rock. As for payment, Albrecht plans to leave for Feinster next spring. He wants to become a master smith, and I'm going to need an assistant. You can come and work off the debt on your spare days. Eragon bowed slightly, delighted. Horse had 2 sons, Albrecht and Baldur, both of whom worked in his forge. Taking one's place was a generous offer. Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to working with you. He was glad that there was a way for him to pay off Horst. His uncle would never accept charity. Then Eragon remembered what his cousin had told him before he left on the hunt. Roran wanted me to give a message to Katrina, but since I can't, can you give it to her? Or can I give it to you to get to her? Of course. And Eragon looks at Horst and he tells him, Roran wants her to know that he'll come back into town as soon as the merchants arrive, and that he will see her then. And Horst asks, is that all? And Eragon was slightly embarrassed. No, he wants her to know that she is the most beautiful girl he has ever seen, and that he thinks of nothing else. Horst's face broke into a grin, and he winked at Eragon. Getting serious, isn't he? Yes, sir, Eragon answered with a quick smile. Could you also give her my thanks? It was nice of her to stand up for her father for me. I hope that she isn't punished because of it. Roran would be furious if I got her into trouble. I wouldn't worry about it. Sloane doesn't know that she called me, so I doubt he'll be too hard on her. Before you go, will you sup with us? I'm sorry, but I can't. So before Eragon leaves, Horse is like, hey man, you want to come eat dinner? It's getting kind of late. And Eragon tells him no. Gara's been expecting me back for some time now. I need to get back to the house. So Eragon starts walking back after he says goodnight to Horst. Near the end of his journey, he turned off of the road, which continued south. A simple path led straight through the waist-high grass and up a knoll, almost hidden by the shadows of protective elm trees. He crested the hill and saw a gentle light shining from his home. The house had a shining roof and black chimney. Eaves hung over the whitewashed walls, shadowing the ground below. One side of the enclosed porch was filled with split wood, ready for the fire. A jumble of farm tools cluttered on the other side. The house had been abandoned for half a century when they moved in after Gara's wife, Marion, died. It was 10 miles from Carvajal, farther than anyone else. People considered this a distance dangerous because the family could not rely on help from the village in times of trouble, but Eragon's uncle would not listen. 100 feet from the house was a dull-colored barn where lived 2 horses, Burka and Brug, with chickens and a cow. Sometimes there was also a pig, but they had been unable to afford one this year. A wagon sat wedged between the stalls on the river where their fields a thick line of trees traced along the Enora River. So he's looking over his farm from this perch on the hill, and it was an old rundown farm. It was abandoned for 100 years before Eragon's uncle's wife died, and they decided that they were going to move out of the village and get away from everybody. And they came and they started working on the farm, and now it's the main house, and they have a barn, and they usually have chickens and a cow, and they have horses. He saw a light move behind a window. He rarely reached the porch. Uncle, it's Eragon. Let me in. A small shutter slid back from her a second, and then the door swung open. Garrow stood with his hand on the door. His worn clothes hung on him like rags on his stick frame. A lean, hungry face with intense eyes gazed out from under graying hair. He looked like a man who had been partly mummified before it was discovered that he was still alive. That's kind of a rough description, buddy. Roarin' sleeping, was his answer to Eragon's inquiring glance. A lantern flickering on the wood table so old that grain stood up in two tiny ridges of faint fingerprint. Near a wood stove were rows of cooking utensils tacked onto the wall with homemade nails. A second door opened to the rest of the house. The floor was made of boards polished smooth by years of trampling feet. Eragon pulled off his pack and took out the meat. "What's this? Did you buy meat? Where did you get the money?" asked his uncle harshly, as he saw the wrapped packages. Eragon took a breath before answering. "No, Horse bought it for us." "You let him pay for it? I told you before, I won't beg for our food. If we can't feed ourselves, we might as well move back into town. Before we can turn around twice, they'll be sending us used clothes and asking if we'll be able to get through the winter." Garrow's face paled with anger. "I didn't accept charity," snapped Eragon. "Horse agreed to let me pay off the work to pay off the debt this spring. He needs someone to help him because Albark is going away." "And where do you think you'll get the time to work for him? Are you going to ignore all the things that need to be done around here?" asked Garrow, forcing his own voice down. Eragon hung his bow and quiver on the hooks beside the front door. I don't know how I'll do it," he said irritably. "Besides, I found something that could be worth some money." He sat the stone down on the table. So he put the stone down in front of Garrow, and they start looking at that. So they start looking at the stone, and Garrow asks him about how the weather was up in the spine. "Cold," was Eragon's reply. "It didn't snow, but it froze each night. Tomorrow you'll have to help Roarin finish harvesting the barley. If we can get the squash picked too, the frost won't bother us." So he's talking about how Eragon was talking about how it wasn't snowing, but it was freezing every night when he was up in the spine, and Garrow's worried about that weather coming down from the mountains and causing them to have a freeze, and they would potentially lose all of their harvest. It took only a moment for Eragon to explain his argument with Sloane. "I just don't understand what angered him so much." Garrow shrugged. "Sloane's wife, Esmira, went over to the Igualda Falls a year before you were brought here. He hasn't been near the spine since, nor had anything to do with it. But that's not a reason to refuse payment. I think he wanted to give you trouble." Eragon swayed blearily and said, "It's good to be back." Garrow's eyes softened, and he nodded. Eragon stumbled into his room, pushing the stone under his bed, and then fell into his mattress. Home. For the first time since before the hunt, he relaxed completely as sleep overtook him. So Eragon started off the day, I guess, by making the trip back to Palancar Valley and to Carvajal, the village where his family lives on the outskirts of, and he went and he tried to buy some meat from Sloane. He got into an argument about where Eragon's bartering object came from, and he pushed him out. Eragon got some meat from one of the village leaders, the blacksmith's Horst. Brings the meat back home, and Garrow kind of freaks out a little bit. He's not a big fan of the idea of taking charity, and he's not a big fan of the idea of Eragon working for it either, because he needs his help here on the farm. He needs him to do his chores and to make sure that they have everything that they still need. But that is the end of Palancar Valley. The next chapter that we will be going into is Dragon Tales, and I'm looking forward to it because this is the chapter where the merchants come back into town, and Eragon learns a little bit more about some lore from King Galbatorix and the fall of the Dragon Riders, and I'm looking forward to getting into that. So please come along with me for next week, and I'll see you guys then. Thank you for watching the Palancar Podcast.